Now we basically just do the same thing for the other two clips. My second camera, if I reactivate that by pressing V, it does have its own audio, but if we listen to that audio, motion tracking is a really fun and it sounds terrible because it's just the camera's built-in microphone from across the room over there. Like, it does not sound good at all. However, it's great for helping me to sync things up. There are several different ways to sync clips within Final Cut Pro. Some are automatic, which is pretty awesome. However, in this case, I like to just do it manually because, again, control freak. A great thing to do is if you're recording with multiple cameras and you start recording, just clap, and then you can line up the audio spike of the clap. However, in this case, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to find the start of an audio waveform here, and I'm just going to try to bring this clip over here. You can use the period and comma keys to nudge clips over one frame at a time, and you can hold down Shift, period, or comma to move them several frames at a time. So if you're trying to do precise alignment, that's basically what you would do. And I'm just going to play this and nudge it until it aligns. Motion tracking is a really fun and powerful and just awesome effect to use in your videos. There, it's pretty much perfectly synced. It has this weird out of phase flangey sound. Fun and powerful and just awesome effect. But there's no echoes or delays if I out of sync it a little bit. It's really fun and powerful, and it sounds like there's two people talking. But if it's perfectly in sync, they're really fun and powerful, and the quality is weird, but it's perfectly in sync. So now that that's lined up, I'm just going to click and drag this down to mute that audio. And now when I play this back, tracking is a really fun and powerful, and they're perfectly in sync because the audio from the bottom clip is lining perfectly with the mouth movement in this top clip. Powerful and just awesome. So that's all done. We don't need to worry about audio anymore. We just need to worry about our coloring. So I'm using a very similar camera to the first camera, which means I can go into my presets, add my Sony full frame customization thing on here, and now just make some fine tuning adjustments to match them up. I typically don't try to make everything look absolutely perfect like you would on a big budget Hollywood film. I just try to make it look pretty decent, and so the transition between the angles isn't distracting. So if I click on this camera angle and press V, I'm going back and forth between them, and I just want to see how well they match. Right now, there's some differences there that I don't really like. So in this clip, like if we look at the purple on my shirt or the skin tones, we can see down here, the colors are a little different, especially in the skin. Things are a little warmer and a little oranger here. So if I remember right, in the color wheels, I had changed the white balance. So we're gonna go to 4700. Actually, for the lens I was using on this camera, it changes things a little bit. So I'm gonna do 4600 to try to match the color temperature a little better. And then we just need to play with our exposure a little bit. Part of me almost likes the exposure better on this second clip, which would mean this one might be a little overexposed. So I might bring that down just a little bit. This is looking pretty good. I might be able to bump this one up a little bit. And a lot of times, because I have so many bright colors, I'm focusing more on the highlights and the mids, not so much the shadows or the global. And then we can decide if we want to saturate things up a little bit. So again, I'm just eyeballing everything. And this looks pretty good. If I look at my skin tones, if I look at the purple in my shirt, it looks fairly similar. I think this one is more saturated, so that would mean here, probably need to add in just a little bit of saturation. That matches quite a bit better, maybe even a little more. There, now this looks pretty decent. It almost looks like it's the exact same camera in two different spots, at least close enough for this video that I'm gonna be happy with it. The only other thing I wanna do with this second shot here is frame it a little bit differently. I think there's too much headroom, so I'm gonna zoom in just a bit and try to scale up to frame it, especially so when I cut between these two shots, my eye line kind of matches. If I drew, if I looked at a point on the screen right here and I went between these, my eye is kind of at that same point. That's a good way to make that transition less jarring between those two camera angles, is by matching eye lines like that. So now this is framed up pretty decently. And the last thing we're gonna do is now do that same thing with our screen recording. This is a little bit different though, because screen recordings work differently. The biggest thing is, it's actually the same problem I'm having right now. The screen I was recording, this laptop screen, is a 16:10 aspect ratio, but the video is a 16:9. So what that means is we end up with square or a less long rectangle in a longer rectangle. And we have these bars on the sides over here. A little behind the scenes tidbit. For the sake of this course, I'm leaving the bars on the side of Final Cut Pro when I show my screen recordings so that you can see the entire frame. I don't want to cut anything off and then have you try to look at the bottom and not see something there that's there on your screen. I think that could be confusing. But typically for my YouTube videos, I will make sure this fills up the whole frame just because I do like the way that looks a little better. The aspect ratio of your screen recording though is going to depend on the screen that you are recording, so you may or may not have this problem. So in this case, what I'm gonna do is just scroll down a little bit, and where it says spatial conform, I'm gonna select fill. And it's just gonna take that and zoom in until it fills the whole frame. And then I'm going to adjust the Y-axis by clicking and dragging until it is what I want. So I don't need my computer's menu bar. And then for this project, I don't think I actually need the top of Final Cut Pro either, so I can take this down and basically have it kind of right about there. So I'm only losing a little bit on the bottom, basically the bottom of the audio meters, but that should be fine. I can crop in and readjust on specific parts later on if I need to in this video. So that's how I'm going to frame my screen recording. The problem with this is syncing it. I made a mistake. Normally when I'm doing a screen recording, I will make sure that my laptop's microphone is recording so I have that terrible sounding audio that I can use as scratch audio to sync things up, but I forgot to do that here. So the only audio that's in this clip is here, and this is audio that's being played back in Final Cut Pro in the screen recording. So what I can try to do is sync that up with the other clip here that comes after the intro. I've now had my Sony FX3. Okay. So I hear myself say, I've now had my Sony FX3. I've now had my... For the intro, this little icon that I put here, I was scrubbing through and I pressed the letter M on my keyboard and that added a marker. And that's telling me this is kind of right where this audio starts. So I go here. If I wanted to, I could even add a marker here by pressing M on that clip. And those markers will automatically align. They will snap to each other. We'll see how that sounds. I've now had my Sony FX3 for just about... I'm gonna turn this down so I can hear the other one a little better. I've now had my Sony FX3 for just about a year. So another way that I can tell if this is synced or not is this on-screen audio is going, but also my mouse movements and my clicking. I can hear myself hitting the space bar and I can see that the pointer up here starts playing and clicks a little bit. I've now had my... So this looks like it's synced up pretty well. Another thing that I could have done is I could have found a point in time where I'm starting to use the computer. I could try to find when my hand movements on the trackpad were matching what the mouse was doing on screen. Fortunately, I didn't have to do that. These markers are super helpful. Now that I don't need them anymore, I'm gonna right click and cut them because I don't want them to be there. We're gonna talk about that more when we jump into the rough cut, which is actually what we're ready to do. So that wasn't too rough. We've got our main camera angle, our secondary camera angle, and our screen recording all synced together, all adjusted for audio and framed, cropped in, adjusted the way that we want them to. And now we're ready to move on to the rough cut and start bringing this project to life.